Welcome to another exciting episode of ARG Presents. I am Amigo Aaron, joined, as always, by the Sweater Vest King, John Bodovkar-Schaller.
Better than the Sofa King.
Nah, you got that right, brother. So, if you tuned in last week, you'll recall that we didn't use the wheel in any way. Due to wacky taping sessions, we have chosen, at non-random, our games this week. And we've decided to feature games on the beloved Turbografx 16. Boat, up until you met me, had you ever messed around with a TG16?
I always admired the Turbografx from afar, especially its the Turbografx portable system, which what was that called? The Turbo Express, right? Yes. The way that it could play the console games on a portable system was mind blowing, and I wanted one so bad because of that.
The Turbografx 16, its number one
in the hood,
point of interest are these. These are HU cards, HU cards, and these have the game on them. This one has Bonk's Adventure, which is probably the premier title on the system. And you just simply take these cards and slip them into the little card reader here, and wham, bam, Bob's your uncle. You're in business. The Turbografx had some neat joysticks that had built-in turbo, which is, I guess, why they called it Turbografx 16. It had two different options for each button to have different settings for rapid fire.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that the games actually featured, they depended on your ability to have a turbo button. For example, when you are a bonk and you're this caveman and you're biting onto things, you use the turbo button to help get yourself above ledges and things like that.
Since the system had the turbos built in, they knew everyone that had a Turbografx 16 had these joysticks. They supported them, and you're right. And this is one of the systems where having the proper joysticks for it makes a world of difference, and having the actual system makes a world of difference. Now, in emulators, they simulate the turbo with with keystrokes and whatnot.
Now, is this one of the systems that had a daisy chain solution for multiple controllers, or is this two ports up front?
This had neither. One of the downfalls, and the Turbografx had many, many problems. The biggest of which is the fact that it only had one joystick port. To use multiple players on this game, you have to have what's called the Turbo Tap, which is just like any other game machine's extra port gimmick. The PlayStation had one, the NES had one. You plug it in, it gives you, I think, 4 or 6 ports. Without this, you're stuck playing one player, and these days, that's an expensive little item. You're talking somewhere in the $60 range, and I've not gotten one because on top of that, you also have to buy the joysticks for it, which are also expensive. So to go from 1 to 2 players on a machine like this, you're probably talking possibly up over $100 between the joystick and the multi-tap. So that's a problem. Another thing, this thing did not have composite out when it was shipped. It had RF out, which is a problem. Now, I've got mine jury-rigged. You can see on the back.
Did you say jury-rigged?
Jury-rigged, that's right. This is the back end. It comes off this big.
Does that just slide out like that?
It does.
Wow.
And then what you had was this big, huge feature slot or expansion slot.
Right. That is. I've never seen that before.
Among other things, this is where your CD unit would plug in. This didn't ship with a CD unit, but they eventually made a turbo CD unit. But they make an item that plugs into this thing that gives you composite out. You can see that I've wired something up to mine, and so it's janky looking, but it does the job. And so that's another failing of the system. And it's a shame that this system had so many flaws because it's actually quite a system, isn't it, Bud? I mean, we were both big fans. Just a little background on the Turbografx 16. This thing was released October 30th, 1987. And this was sort of an in-between console. It fell in between the NES and Super Nintendo. It was right there in that weird area. This had, they shipped about 10 million of these worldwide. That's the figure that I came up with. I mean, that's okay.
I think this is definitely a machine whose biggest success was in Japan.
Absolutely. In Japan, this was known as the PC Engine. Mm-hmm. And the PC Engine, I might add, was the actual device was a more functional device in terms of the way it looked. I like the look of it better. The Turbografx 16 is kind of awkward, strange system. This shipped. Now look at this, Bo. I find this rather fascinating. This shipped for $199, which is not too bad. In today's money, that's $444 US. So not too bad. It was made by NEC, and it had, like I said, it had a CD peripheral that shipped with it eventually, and that was about $400 US. It was called the Turbografx CD. The CD unit was pretty solid. They had a lot of good tiles for it. In fact, in Japan, the CD unit was really embraced. Not so much in the States. I didn't know a single person that had a Turbografx 16 when I was in 87, 88. I never knew. In fact, I don't know anyone that's got one now, aside from me. I know other people do, but do you know anyone that ever had one?
No. In fact, I remember seeing this in magazines, and at first thinking that NEC stood for Nintendo Entertainment Center.
Yeah, no kidding. So this is an interesting system in that it's 8 and 16-bit. It has an odd setup internally. This was only released in Europe in a very limited way in 1990, so it was released well after it was in Japan. In the U.S., it was released just a day before my birthday, August 29th, 1989.
Wow, just in time for you to graduate. You just graduated from high school,
I
right?
just graduated from high school about 2 months before that. Crazy, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, gosh, how time flies. This system had a bunch of great games. If I had to pick the flagship title, it would be Bonk, the Caveman. We, on our sister show, Amigos, reviewed the Amiga version of that, BC Kid, and they ran pretty much neck and neck. And the Turbografx, despite the fact that it wasn't as powerful, conventionally powerful as, say, the Super Nintendo, it could hold its own in a lot of ways. They were very clever the way it was designed, and Hudson, I think, was behind a majority of the design on this before they farmed off the actual production to NEC. And it's a very cleverly made unit. And I bought this thing at a pawn shop years ago. I got it for, I think I paid $75 for it in US. And these have exploded. And these are sort of, in this day where everyone's sort of getting into the retro thing, and there's got to be a ceiling, but these systems have become very popular, and they should be. They're easy to collect for, and they're fun. You can get some of the Hue cards are really cheap, mm-hmm. Some are not, mm-hmm. Right? And
I think the Hue card it seems like a very durable medium.
It is.
There's not a lot to break on it. Sometimes if you drop a cart, it'll crack the plastic casing. This thing is like it reminds you of a door access card or something like that.
What I like on the back here, they've got notes. Did you ever see this? Don't bend, drop, or subject to shock. Good advice. Keep away from static electricity, direct water, heat, and direct sunlight. Please put back into the case after you play.
It's words to live by.
Which I've never done. Now, these had little cases though, but yeah, they are there. And there's something about a system running off of cards. We spoke last week about the Master System, which also had a card solution. There weren't too many. They're not cartridges, they're not discs, they're cards. But it was always neat, and they pack a lot on these little things, don't they, Bo? But you can see how a CD solution would be in order, given the limited space that a Hue card could actually hold. With that in mind, we'll go ahead and jump into our games. This week, I will go first. I picked the game Blazing Lasers. All right, I had heard a lot about this game before I actually played it. And I will say this is one of the first times I think I may have tooled around with it a few times before this, but this is the first time I really sat down and gave it a whirl, because I'm not the best at these sorts of games, admittedly, and so I'd sort of steered clear, but I'd heard so much about it that I had to give it a whirl. So this was released in Japan in July of '89, and it came out in North America in November of '89, so not too far past. What you've got here is a straight-up old school shooter. This one is a single-player game, and it was known in Japan as Gunhead. Did you know that?
No.
And it was based on like a TV show or film called Gunhead.
Okay.
And they changed the name in America to Blazing Lasers for the obvious reason that I'd never heard of Gunhead.
It was the sequel to Stonehead, the game based around that pro wrestler.
Stonehead not involved. The game, you are basically a fighting, you have a space fighter and you're going up. That's all you need to know. And you are confronted by a ton of different enemies. This game, really, what makes this game interesting, well, there's a couple things. First off, the second you start it up, you realize, man, this looks really good. If you think back to '89, you could have put this game in any arcade and it would have looked like a great game.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful game. And I look at this game and I'm like, how did this system not be more successful? I mean, just the look of it. I know I've got friends that are really into these bullet hell type shooters, which I wouldn't say this is what that is, but this is sort of like bullet heck, right?
Right.
But this game ticks all the check boxes. Beautiful graphics, cool sound, the fact that the screen scrolls slightly left to right. When games don't do that, they really feel sort of stifling.
Yeah.
And this one does a real good job. It gives you that little bit of extra real estate. Of course, the main thing you've got that you can do is upgrade your gun. And the upgrades in this are absolutely insane. I mean, they're so insane that I had to get like a FAQ to try to understand how they work.
Yeah, I did. It's the most, and I mean, I'm no expert in this, but of all the shoot 'em ups that we've played, either on this show or on Amigos, this is the most complex as far as the way the power up systems work.
Absolutely. What you'll do is when you shoot an enemy, you'll see basically a number drop, and then among other things, and so this number represents a different style of gun, I guess, effectively, and it's a different color, so it's a different style and a different level of the gun. And you build these guns up, and you get all kinds of crazy guns. Examples: there are some guns that shoot it looks almost like lightning that shoots up, and then if you get a high enough variant of that, it's sort of like enemy seeking, and it goes in these crazy patterns. It's hard to explain, isn't it? I mean, it just really, it almost looks like electricity. It just goes, it's willy-nilly. You also will get these kind of boomerang-looking items, which actually that's on the screen right now, and they shoot up and they
shoot a little bit behind shots. You first, and then
yeah. You also will get, aside from these main weapons, and of course you'll get lasers and bullets. You also get a secondary weapon, and these are often my personal favorite were the heat-seeking missiles, a throwback to my days of playing Star Control 2 and Alcon. I like the heat-seeking missiles, but they also would have a secondary ship that would come out.
A little drone sort of thing.
And the drone was awesome. You would also have these, also like Alcon. If you've ever played Alcon, which is another arcade shooter that's really good, this sort of reminded me of a jacked-up Alcon on super steroids because it was... the backgrounds and stuff were attractive like Alcon, but the guns in this are much more interesting. You can get these side shots that just sort of radiate out of your ship. You get this kind of shield gimmick that would sort of surround your ship, and it was quite remarkable to see it in action. And part of the fun is just trying out these new weapons, and seeing how it goes. There's a wacky checkpoint system in this when you get killed. If you grab certain items, it will let you start further up the level.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yes. What that means is if you get these certain, they're I want to say circles. What's a better, like an orb, right? It will let you start where you die. Okay. Otherwise, you have to start at the beginning of the level.
That's what the purple orbs are?
I can't remember. I've gotten them, but I'm not sure exactly what the color is.
Okay.
On. This game has so much going on. This is like the Super Frog collection game of shooters. There's just crap everywhere, and it gets absolutely insane. Of course, you've got the shields, you've got the secondary power-ups. You've also got, of course, you've got to have the bosses. This game's got a bunch of crazy bosses. You've got weird robots and kind of this mechanical butterflies and all the stuff you'd expect. You also have an awesome sort of, the game has and this was confusing at first. I was going to ask you if you had fell for the same thing. in the background, there's all kinds of stuff going on. There's like, sometimes you'll fly over like a hangar deck or something. And at first, I thought this stuff would kill you. So you have to take me a minute to because there's not a big differential between what's
in the foreground and the background.
Right, but I mean, it's not really a problem. But at first, I was like, what the hell is this? So this game has been wildly popular. It was a pretty sought after game in America. You don't see it that much. And it was one of the pricier games for the system. It reviewed well. This got a 4 out of 5 from All Game, 5 out of 5 from Dragon, EGM. They're tough to please over there sometimes back in the day. They gave it an 8 out of 10. GameSpot gave it a 7. I wonder if these would even go up now. I mean, this game is sort of, like I said, I heard about this game from other shows and other media, and I was like, man, it can't be as good as they say. But I mean, as far as shooters go and attractiveness and everything, it's got to be right up there. Now, aside from the fact that you're shooting other ships, you're also shooting off like land. How can you just explain this? Like you're shooting off guns and stuff that are like land-based. It's sort of like if you remember in Xevious, you drop bombs and stuff. In this, you don't have to do that. You just sort of shoot them, but they're sort of under.
They're attached to the ground. It's magic.
Yeah, it's it is. It's quite magical. But they'll shoot at you. So well, to summarize. The game, the background stuff are nice. The graphics look good. But the main draw of this game is the weaponry. Really, if you took the backgrounds and stuck them in another game, you'd be like, that's pretty good. But the weapon is the draw. Really, the enemies didn't strike me as particularly awesome. They're okay. Don't get me wrong, but it didn't. I wasn't like, it's not the best thing I ever saw. It's the various weapons, the way you use them. And we could spend 2 podcasts going over the various methodology for how you get these weapons in what order. I mean, it's really complex. And the Japanese love their shooters, and you could tell this one was one that someone sat around. I guess it's like the same way that they put all the fighting system into a fighting game, where for us, just like punch and kick the guy. There's an intricate depth to it that I want to mention, but can't possibly understand. Does that make any sense? I looked this thing up on eBay to see how we were doing on it. Loose, you can get this one for $40. That's loose. In the jewel case, you're looking at between $50 and $65. And then, aside from just having a little jewel case, these also had a paper box release that went around the jewel case. If you want that, you're going to go up over $60, up into the $100 range. An expensive game. Now, just for fun, I looked up what Gunhead was going for. Same game. It's going for loose $30 and up, and then the jewel case $51 to $70.
About half the price.
So if you're into Gunhead, really, if you want to backdoor your way in.
I was going to say, do you know if the Turbografx 16 is region free? Can you play?
I think you can play the Japanese stuff. I think you can. I've never done it, and to be honest with you, it's so difficult to find any games from the Turbografx that locally. I've seen very few, and so the fact that you can forget about imports. I mean, I'd have to literally go out and import them. In West Virginia, the Turbografx. I mean, I bet there's not 100 in the state.
Yeah.
There's no one has any games for them. I think I've bought almost every game I've ever seen for them. There just aren't that many around. And in the States, this game system was marketed poorly. It came at a bad time. It came right in the middle of the Nintendo fervor, and with the Genesis kicking up, it was a doomed console. But this is now the time. If you're going to get into the Turbografx, now's the time. And if you're going to buy a game, this is not the worst one to start off with. So there you go. What did you think about it overall?
I think, you look at it like sort of a crap shooter like Hybris. This game is everything that Hybris wishes it could be. There's never any slowdown. There's an amazing variety of weapons. The way that the parallax scrolling works, where you have slower moving stars, faster moving stars, a hangar or some sort of a constructed object in the background, plus a variety of large and small enemies, all fully animated. Everything happening at once, everything happens at full speed all the time. It's an amazing accomplishment for a system with the specs of the Turbografx 16. right off the bat, I was impressed because your ship is shot in a very sort of, I consider it to be like a Battlestar Galactica type launch sequence where you're really shot out of there like a what is that thing? A slingshot.
Yeah.
So it also kind of scared me because I felt like I was going really fast, even though it's an optical
illusion.
That's
the part where I wasn't sure what would kill me.
Yeah. There's a huge variety of enemies. The bosses they're big, they're well animated, they're colorful. Just like you, and I think you put this very well, there is a system here that I can appreciate but can't fully understand or articulate.
Yeah.
But it's you can tell that there are probably people that are real into Blazing Lasers that can tell you about it. The only thing I wish this game had is some kind of an upgrade or like a currency collecting shop mechanic. I think that would be a cool thing, like in between levels, purchase, upgrades. That might make it easier to understand what is above what, too, because sometimes I would get a gun and it seemed like it was the next Roman numeral up from what I had, but it wasn't as powerful. And
It was the color system.
Yeah, I didn't understand.
We didn't get into the mega bombs, which this game also has, when you can shoot the old. It's got the ultra bomb on top of everything else. The shot mechanics and stuff. I mean, I got good enough at it. Which I'm considering this is one of the games. This is one of the problems with playing a console game. There was no cheat system. There was no infinite lives, so I could play as long as I could play. I got to the point I could play for about 15 minutes, generally. But I knew I did know what weapons I liked and what to look for. And once I got them, I just didn't touch anything else.
That's really the key. You just at some point you're actively avoiding the hundreds of things that are traveling down the screen at one time.
And I'm sure, like I said, if someone that has a little more in-depth knowledge of the way the system works probably would know what to go after. But I once I found something I liked, I settled on that and went forward.
And this might be. We've played a good amount of shooting games on Amiibos, and there's been some good ones. But I think this one might be my favorite, just because it's chaotic without being incredibly difficult.
Yes.
It's colorful and varied in a way a lot of games aren't. For example, you'd expect a game like this with this much action just to be set against a blank Starfield. So I highly approve of this game. It was a good choice on your part.
It was just pretty much completely random, but he's right when he says that I did not get all the way through the game by any stretch, but the speed of the game was not too fast to where I thought I've got no chance to ever do well.
Right.
I mean, and there are plenty of those bullet hell shooters where you're just boned, like the later Raidens and stuff. I mean, I'm not good at these, but I've played a lot of them, and it unlike, say, like a beat 'em up or something where you're like, I'll just spend more money and I'll eventually beat this guy up. There's some points where I'm just like, I can't ever get past this ever. And this one, I had a good amount of, I had a good vibe going. It was smooth, and I thought I was doing okay. Mm-hmm. And I thought after I played this for a while, I might almost get halfway decent at it. And when there's hope, that makes you want to play it more.
Now let me ask you a question, because I know how much you love Alcon.
Yes.
Where would you put this up against Alcon?
Well, Alcon, of course, is more familiar. It's also known as Slap Fight, stupidly, over in the UK. And it's an arcade shooter. It really never got a port except for on the C64. It's a very not necessarily close port. Mm-hmm. Alcon is similar. Alcon is much easier to understand, but this has a lot more depth than Alcon. And the lasers, the weaponry is much wackier in this. Alcon's fairly straightforward, and also in the weaponry in Alcon, after you get to a certain point, you don't want some of these weapons; they're not good. Mm-hmm. But this is a beautiful, beautiful game, and the bosses in this are kind of a lot cooler than the ones in Alcon. I was never a huge fan of those either. So probably, again, like I said, I don't know what year Alcon came out. I think it came out in '87, amazingly. So if this came out at the same time, I mean, this would probably trump it. What's the truth? They're both very good games.
Yeah. All right. Well, you want to switch over to my game?
Go ahead. What do you got for us this week, Mr. Boat?
I chose Magical Chase. We were discussing before the show how strange it was that we both picked shooters, but luckily they are very different games.
Boy, you ain't kidding there.
Magical Chase is I like to call it, and I didn't invent this, but I think it's a cool name, a cute 'em up. This is a horizontally scrolling shooter versus a vertically scrolling shooter that was released in Japan in 1991 and got a US release in 1993. So this is one of the later releases for the Turbografx 16. I don't think that the Turbografx lasted much longer in the States past 93. It was developed by a Japanese outfit called Quest, and it was later ported to Windows in 1998, but only in Japan.
I was going to say, that's wacky. Yeah.
And also it got a Japanese release for the Game Boy Color, known as Magical Chase GB.
So this never got an American release outside of this?
Outside of the Turbografx
No
version.
kidding.
Yeah.
Because this game I've heard of, and so that's why I'm surprised to hear that. I thought this is a pretty popular game.
Yeah, well, it is a very highly sought after game, as we'll talk about a little bit later on. But first, I want to just tell you a little bit about Quest. In 1995, there were a bunch of people that were part of the Quest team that left the team to join Square, where they went on to develop, get this, Final Fantasy Tactics. So they went from developing a shooter to a really tactical game. They did I think one of the Ogre Battle or something like that were part of those guys too.
That was a strategy game as well. Wasn't it?
Yeah. So but in 2002, the circle kind of traversed and Quest was purchased by Square, and so all of those people that left were reunited with their former colleagues.
Wonder how that went over.
Yeah, maybe they were glad to be back.
That was a rough first day.
So this game is about a witch. The witch's name is Ripple, and
just like the wine.
Yeah, and she is she's a witch apprentice. She's a young witch, and the story goes that she has just broken a promise she made to the witch and took a peek inside a forbidden book. And when she did that, it freed 6 demons.
Oh man!
So what she's got,
like some H.P. Lovecraft level action there.
So what she's got to do is she's got to catch all 6 demons, put them back in the book, and restore harmony to the universe.
Oh, okay.
So unless she gets it back, the witch, her master witch, is going to turn her into a frog. So she wants to avoid that. She sets off on her quest with the 2 stars that are in front of her, or sort of to the side of her. They're actually characters in the story. They're known as Star Maidens, and their names are Topsy and Turvy.
Okay.
This you would never know unless you read the manual.
I knew none of this. That's wacky.
And so basically what happens is this is a horizontally scrolling shooter, not unlike Gradius or R-Type or any one of a lot of games.
It's sort of unlike them.
Yeah, well, yeah. What makes this game interesting is the scenery is much. The art style is a much different type than R-Type or Gradius, where those are all sort of sci-fi settings where you're flying around in space. This is more of a cutesy fantasy setting. If you've ever played Fantasy Zone before, this is another one of those type of games where all the enemies are sort of cutesy. The level designs are all sort of like kids' playroom type things that you might see. And the big gameplay element that makes this game different are the 2 stars, which I guess are named Topsy and Turvy. You are able to manipulate those into different locations to kind of act like a shield against your adversaries. Another thing that makes this game different than Gradius or R-Type is that you can come into contact with the boundary areas without taking damage. So if you're down at the bottom of the screen, you can bump up against the bottom of the screen and it doesn't hurt you. So I like that.
I found that out eventually because I've been avoiding them most of the time.
Another cool thing about this game is there is an in-game shop. As you're flying along in a level,
I knew after what you said about the last game, you'd be happy about this.
Yeah, there's a guy floating around in a pumpkin, or he's actually a man with a pumpkin head that is floating around in a hot air balloon, and you approach the shop and you can enter it, and the game stops, and you can purchase extra hearts, extra lives. You can purchase upgrades for your weapon.
Yeah, this guy's. As soon as I saw that balloon pop on the screen, the first time I thought, well, I'm dead. I didn't know what it was, and I ran into him like, oh, okay, yeah, Halloween Jack.
Yeah,
and so and those are very helpful. That you can get the cool weapons, and you can also buy more energy and stuff too.
Yeah. So you basically make your way through the 6 levels, and then you meet your goal, and the game ends. That is Magical Chase. So, Aaron, what did you think of Magical Chase?
My first impression was, oh, good God, no. But I had some knowledge of this. Was this ever an arcade game, or just did
no?
It start? Okay. There are some of those cute 'em ups that I've played before, and this one, I mean, it's got a rep. I've heard of it. I don't know why. You hear about things. And this is another one I'd heard about, Magical Chase, and I had not played it. It's very colorful. I'm not good at it. I'll admit that. But after playing Blazing Lasers, this seemed like a real step in the other direction, to be honest with you. It's not, now that much said, I'm not ragging on it, because it's not setting out to be a game like Blazing Lasers. It's good. It's probably good for like a kid or someone who's into the sort of visuals that are involved in it. And it's sort of fun in a way. I like the ability to find this. I like getting the money. It had sort of what it reminded me of is sort of a
Blood Bunny.
That you got it. That's exactly what it was, except not nearly as super deadly and much cuter. But it's the same sort of gimmick. Collect the money, go to the store, get the upgrades, and keep on trucking.
Right.
And so that's not too bad. The enemies were wacky. There's some of that Gradius series that gets pretty wacky as well. So, when you're playing these Japanese shoot 'em ups, you get some pretty zany stuff sometimes. Like I said, not knowing the story, I just assumed, I knew you were a witch. The rest of it, I had no idea what was going on. I was not good at manipulating the stars to do stuff. I didn't quite. I knew they did stuff and you can move them. I didn't know what. I'm looking at the video that you're looking at now, and this one's in Japanese. The one I played was all in English, so definitely this had a United States port, clearly. But I liked it. I liked the fact that you talked to a pumpkin head to get you stuff, and it was everything was clear and defined. I didn't get real far into it because I'm not good enough, but I did enjoy the time I spent with it. I sometimes will rail on these games that are cutesy looking since I'm such a cool tough guy that it offends me. But every once in a while, one is so goofy that I enjoy it, and this one sort of like falls into that category. It's fun. What throws me is if you're gonna like give a game like this to play for like a kid, like what kid could play this? It's hard. It's a pretty hard game. And so there's no in between. Like if you're going to make a game, now I know these aren't necessarily made for kids, but I want to let my kid play this game and he would get smashed. But it's got teddy bears and witches and cute stuff like that. So there's, maybe, I don't know who does this appeal to, I guess is where I'm going.
Well, it's sort of like pro wrestling. I mean, why should that appeal to anybody?
I agree.
It does.
I agree.
It's a stylistic choice. Some people like stuff that looks cute. Like I love platformers that are cute, like Do Re Mi Fantasy. I love that game, and it has the same sort of aesthetic. It just depends on your personal taste.
I suppose so. But I like I said, a game like Blazing Lasers that's more like,
hardcore.
Well, yeah, it's more cool looking to me. I mean, hey, it is. I'm trying to think of a G-rated way to say it, but
you can say badass on this.
That's exactly where I was going. And this game is not.
Yeah.
But it's still interesting. It's got an interesting. I like the store concept, and the fact that it's so it didn't get ported very much is interesting. Have you ever played the Game Boy versions of this? Have you ever?
No. So they only were released in Japan, and I didn't seek out on the emulator.
It might be something worth trying.
Yeah.
Because since we're going through sort of a Game Boy renaissance, me and you.
Right.
It's fun. I've played games similar to this. In fact, I think I've even played a shooter where you're a witch, and it was a vertical shooter. I wish I remember what it was. So this is not a concept that was abandoned, clearly. And the other game that I played where you were a witch is much more difficult than this one. There's something about the horizontal shooters that appeals to me.
On the whole, would you say you're a bigger fan of horizontal or vertical shooters?
Gosh, it's a good... Listen, I broke in playing stuff like Scramble and Super Cobra, and so that's what I grew up playing. To me, I have a better vision of what's going on. Generally, the items on the screen are bigger, So I would probably be better at horizontal ones, but the vertical ones, they can really make them look nice. So it's a toss-up. But I mean, some of my favorite shooters are horizontal games, like your Silkworm, for example. So, I don't know. I don't know if I have a preference. They're both awful good. And I'm not panning this. It was pretty fun. I wish I was better at it so I could see more. That's the problem with these games. I'm not that good at them, and so I don't get to go very far into them before I get killed. So. But I enjoyed what I got to play of it. I thought it was interesting.
Cool. I did look this up on eBay, and the only reason why I'd ever heard of Magical Chase is because it's one of the most expensive domestically produced video games of all time.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
This got a limited release in the United States. Like I said, this came at the tail end of the Turbografx 16. It didn't even come. They were cutting costs at the end of the life of the console. They didn't even put the HuCard in a jewel case. They just slapped it in a cardboard box.
Really?
And shipped it out.
Wow.
Yeah. This thing loose on eBay, you're talking about $3,500.
Holy mackerel. Maybe that's what I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
It is a very, very expensive game.
That's loose.
That's loose.
What about a box copy?
I did not see any boxed copies on eBay, so I would wager to guess you're talking about maybe twice that much. However, just like many games that are rare these days, there are outfits out there making repro HuCards of them, and you can get a reproduction HuCard of this for $60. So if you're desperate to have one for the collection, you can pick one up. So,
all that said, we hope you enjoyed this week's episode. We have opened up ARG to Patreon support. If you dig the ARG Presents gimmick, the show, what we're into, you want to throw us a buck or two, that'd be great. We appreciate it. If you can't, listen, we understand. No big deal.
There's something in it for you all too, the listener. If you support ARG Presents at any level, you immediately gain access to our Discord server. And let me tell you, the Discord is the place to be. The Amigos Retro Gaming Discord. There is stuff going on there 24/7. Retro gaming talk, coding talk. We got a bunch of computer programmers in there. Amiga talk. We've even got a book talk channel. So if you want to be around awesome other people from all over the world, this is the way to do it. Support us on Patreon.
Yeah, Discord's great. If you're not, I didn't know what it was when Boat first turned me on to it. It's basically a real time chat app, or you can. There's a browser version as well, which I use, and you just pop in and chat if you want, or just read what people are saying, and it's real simple to use. It's light and it's fun, and I have to say, of all the things we've done with the show over the years, adding the Discord chat has been one of the top ones. I love it. Like I tell him, since we've got a lot of listeners that are in Australia and the UK and Europe, I'll get up in the morning and that thing will be full of new messages I get to read and respond to. And then of course when they're all in bed, that's when me and Boat are active and we're chatting back and forth. And so it's great. It's always fun. If you need help with something, there's usually someone there to help you out.
Yeah.
If you need help on a game, and I know Boat and me check the chat quite a bit just to see what's happening. Like I said, everyone's got their own interests and it's a lot of fun. So that's a nice reason to drop us a buck or two if you feel so inclined. Boat, are you ready to spin the wheel and
Absolutely.
Make the deal?
So this week the wheel is going to work a little bit differently. We have some blank spots on the wheel because we recorded a couple episodes ahead of time. And for all the blank spots if the wheel comes up on a blank spot or the chat choice, we're going to make all three of these chat choice.
Oh man, so we're weighing the wheel heavily towards chat choice.
Right now, the people in the chat that are listening live, they are going to help pick if those three spots come up. So, here we go.
Give her a whirl, Boat. All right. You get good action on that, Boat. I got to give you credit.
Thank you.
So we're going to see what the wheel's choosing for us to play here next week. That was
Arcade Classics.
That's outstanding, Boat. So, Arcade Classics. I will play Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. What are you going to play?
What do you think I'm going to play?
I don't know.
Run.
Are you kidding me?
The
That's
greatest
so obvious.
arcade game of all time.
It's so obvious. I know, but you love it, and you know I'm stinky at it too. So you can kill me at it. So we're going to be playing Cadillacs and Dinosaurs and Do Run Run. I picked Cadillacs and Dinosaurs because my son is a big fan of it, and I've played it 4 million times.
I think we should have score challenges on both these games.
score challenge.
High score challenge.
How is that going to work with unlimited quarters?
Well, you're going to use 1 quarter.
Okay. How are we going to? Is it on honor system then?
No, I'm going to make you tape your thing and submit it to Twin Galaxies.
Listen, have you seen what's happening on Twin Galaxies?
Yeah, you're more upstanding than all those fools. You're a fine, upstanding young man.
You really mean it? I appreciate that, but he's lying. So next week we're going to be playing arcade classics, Cadillacs and dinosaurs, and Do Run Run, your personal favorite. So join us next week, and until then,
adios. Aaron and John making a new podcast.